So one of the comments that I get regularly is how to play Arcane, specifically like I do. And also another comment I get is why my legs are always up on my desk. Today I'm going to show you guys how I would play Arcane in Corrupted Dungeons to give you a brief understanding of how the weapon works and how to play it. If you guys have any more questions than this, there's one link in my description in every YouTube video that has my Discord server and my Twitch on it. Feel free to pop in and ask me some more questions in either of those. But for now, let me take you through the build that I'm going to be running, at least for Corrupted Dungeons. The reason I'm doing Corrupted Dungeons is because Arcane realistically only works in Corrupted Dungeons. What you see me do on YouTube videos is just like pure luck, honestly. I can't lie to you. So the most basic build you can use for Corrupted Dungeons, you have Hunter Hood with Balanced Mind, Merc Jacket, Balanced Mind, any sort of plates boots, any plate boots with toughness, and 1 on the Arcane, and a torch. If you're playing Stalker level Corrupted Dungeons, your build should not be any more than 100k. Even this build at this point is absolutely stupid. Right, now that I've said stupid, I don't want to hear anyone in the comments, stupid, fuck off. So we're here on my island, and there's a few things I want to show you, like different combinations and some tips I can give you before I hop in and show you some corrupted fights. So if I show you some abilities, you have to remember that everything on Arcane is a skill shot. So typically what you want to do in a fight is you want to use your Q while walking backwards, as I miss. You want to use your Q while walking backwards to make up as much damage as you can before the fight actually starts. The moment you're close to the other player, your first combination and your first thought process is to get off your Q and W at the same time. With this, now what you can do is you've now procced your passive, which activates every time you use your Q and hit your Q. What you'll do is you'll gain Arcane Charge, and it will increase your normal attack or your next direct bit of damage to the enemy. So a good way to combo this is to use your Q, W, and then 3 normal attacks like that. 4, because 4 come out pretty quickly. Now you've already done a fair amount of damage to the enemy player, and your idea is to keep walking backwards, even use boots if you can. You want to wait for your cooldowns for your second W to come up before you go in for your next combination. So as I said before, you're going to keep queuing, keep poking as much as you can. The enemy player might jump on you. Now this is why you have the Hunter Hood. If it's a melee player, the best thing you can do is, say you're fighting against a dual swords or something like that. You're going to keep queuing to poke them. They're going to jump on you. You're going to Hunter Hood, Q, W, normal attack, normal attack, normal attack. You've already done about 1000 HP before they've even had any time to think. Plus you've released your Hunter Hood on them. If you can time it correctly, then you've just hit them for like absurd amounts. Now with your W, there's 2 options or 3 options you realistically have. The first one is you can use your W and just leave it at that and just wait for the cooldown. The cooldown. Now if you use the W without combining it with a teleport, your cooldown is 11 seconds. Now, sometimes a player will jump on you, say a melee player. The first thing I usually do against a melee player is poke, W, dash, and sprint. Now, a player will always chase you, but it gives you that extra few seconds to be able to wait for your next cooldowns. Also, if the enemy player has a purge, it's really useful for making up that distance so that they can't purge your boots, so it gives you more time to use your mobility. It basically gives you time before they've even had a chance to hit you to get your damage off and get your cooldowns back. Now the third option which you have, and I should mention that if you do use your teleport, the cooldown goes to 18.79 seconds, 19 seconds pretty much. And now the third option with this W which you can use, which you'll see in the Corrupted Dungeon fights, but I wouldn't, if you're a beginner player or someone just starting out Arcane, don't even think about this, because this takes a lot of time and a lot of experience to understand and use properly. You have an iframe on your W when you teleport. The moment you click your W, it becomes an iframe for 0.2 seconds. What this means is that if you can time it correctly, you can basically cancel out the damage from a one-hand cursed E, you know, a one-hand crossbow E, that sort of thing, that's on a timer, on a tick, or even something like just normal damage that if you can time it correctly, you can cancel out that damage. It's really hard to pull off, and I'm not even going to be able to show you on the training dummies here, but you'll see it in the Corrupted Dungeon fights, which I'll show you. Your third ability, your E, is a sphere of arcane energy that you shoot in a target direction. It's your third skill shot, and the range on it, I think we're probably looking at around about there. That's probably the furthest you're realistically going to want to shoot it. And now what this ability does, it will silence and purge pretty much at the same time. I think it silences then purges now. I can't remember, or maybe it purges then silences now, which really isn't that important for you to know, but I just thought I'd mention it anyway. Now, you want to use this ability usually once or twice in the fight. You don't want to just combine all your damage like this unless you know the situation and it's what's best for you. Now, this is another reason why Arcane is so hard, because you need to be able to read every fight and know every enemy's abilities and weapons and their sort of play style before the fight's even happened to know how you're going to go about the fight. So the idea behind this is, if you're chasing someone or the player has a merc jacket, all you want to do is use your E on them. It will cancel out their boots, it will cancel out their merc jacket, it will cancel out their cleric robe. Basically, any armor or defensives or any buff they have on themselves, it will cancel out. Now, something you should know with this, which I might have a fight I can show you, but I don't think I do, is if the enemy player has a purge and you know they're going to use that purge for your mercenary jacket, what you can do is you can actually use the silence to stop them from being able to purge you. Now, what I would do, actually, let's just show you basically what I would do in a situation if the enemy player has a purge. So, merc jacket, the reason why I use merc jacket and it's so good for Arcane is that you can combine it with your passive to basically get off all your mercenary jacket stacks really fucking fast. I think the fastest I've ever procced all 7 mercenary jacket stacks is like 0.4 seconds. Something absolutely disgusting, right? So I'm basically just going to show you how it would look like in a fighting scenario, how you would use your E to cancel out an enemy's purge so that you can get off the most of your merc jacket stacks as possible. So what you're going to want to do is Q merc jacket E, and as it's in midair, start your normal attacks, and you can see I pretty much got all my merc jacket stacks off before they've even had a chance. Now, sometimes you'll get a little bit of a delay with your normal attacks like that, and it basically means that you need to reset your normal attacks. You can do this by using the E and pretty much make it instant, or you can also do that by combining the E, the Q and W, and basically will reset the normal attacks so you can do them instantly. Because sometimes you use your merc jacket and, you know, it takes a little bit of a delay, and with you using your silence on a delay like that, it gives them more of a chance to be able to get off their purge. And like I mentioned before, there's a few combinations. It's going to be pretty hard for me to try and aim this without hitting all the dummies, because I'm only trying to target one player here. Your idea is to reset your normal attacks to get off your mercenary jacket as fast as possible. So another combination you can do is Q, merc jacket, W, normal attack, normal attack, normal attack, and it's basically done. I know I did hit this mob here, but, you know, without hitting that mob there at the same time... Oh, we got a sub. Without hitting that mob there, if you time it correctly, by the time you've done your Q, W, and you started normal attacking, you can use another Q to basically proc the final bit of your mercenary jacket. So again, I always use eel stews because the damage and cooldown is pretty fucking important on Arcane Staff, considering you need to make up that little bit of damage, and your cooldowns is your biggest thing being an Arcane player. I use Resistance Pot for Corrupted Dungeons as just a cheaper Gigantify potion, but whenever I'm out in open world or other roads, I always use a Gigantify potion. So I'm going to chuck you guys in so you can watch how some of these fights play out in Corrupted Dungeon. I try and explain them as best as I can while going through it, what my thought process is, but we'll see how that works out. So we're playing against the Fire Staff. The one thing I need to remember is I can not reflect his E. He also has a soldier helmet and a cultist robe, so this is going to be a bit of a tough fight. The way I want to play this is basically to just poke him as much as I can. The way you play against Fire Staffs is you have to make up some distance on them, because if you get close, they're going to spam the shit out of you. So I'm just going to poke for now, basically get some damage in. I'm not putting myself in range to do normal attacks because I don't want to put myself in range quite yet. My main idea right now is to just poke the enemy before he can poke me. That's an easy dodge. Let's get off some normal attacks. I should not have done that. I basically just wanted to silence him, and now we're just going to make up some distance, basically. He's going to reset. I'm also going to reset because I played that badly from the start. The main thing that's going to work out here is this player just isn't very good, and it just gives me an opportunity to just chase him down, basically, at this point, because of the fact that I can just teleport over that wall. He's stuck in that. He's gone for cultist. I'm just going to hit him a few times. He's going to walk back into the mobs and he's just going to die. Give it a second. He's just going to drop any second now. Maybe not. Maybe not. So here's firewalls down. I'm actually going to use this to teleport and bring up myself some distance towards him. He's going to hit that. It's absolutely fine. I don't have to res bot in this situation. All I have to do is just hit him with one more Q. Throw that out. Maybe hit him. No, that's fine. You know what? I'm actually going to reset the fight to give him a chance. So basically what I want to use in order of my abilities here is I want to use my Q to poke him, obviously. I want to use my W to teleport over his firewall or make some distance for me in terms of mobility. And I want to use my E to silence whenever he uses his cultist robe. Merc Jacket, pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to teach you something at some point with Merc Jacket. Hunter Hood I can't use for his E, so I'm going to use it for his Qs. And if I think his E is going to hit me, I'm going to use Resipot. So you'll see at this point, I'm just going to use my Hunter Hood. He's taken a lot of damage there. I'm just going to keep poking him a little bit. Let's use our Merc Jacket so I can show you a little technique here that you can do. And you can spam all of your normal attacks in this situation. Let's silence that, not purge it. He's not going to be able to get off all of his cultist robe. He might turn at some point soon because of the fact that his E comes up in about 2-3 seconds from now. We're just going to finish him off. It's not really a hard task. So I really haven't even had the chance to show you much about this weapon yet before that even happened. So this is already the worst tutorial you've ever seen in your life. There's one thing about Arcane that you need to know. It's a really situational weapon in terms of you need to know what you're fighting against to be able to do good against that player. So I'm going to show you this boss as if it was a player. Let's say, you know, a melee player, basically. So you want to Q and W as early as you can and get off as many normal attacks as you can. The moment your third normal attack has gone off, you're just going to keep going for Qs. So I want to show you something that I was talking about earlier when it comes to using your Merc Jacket and your Q at the same time to make it as useful as your Merc Jacket can be. So sometimes an enemy player might have a purge. Now what you want to do in that situation is use your E to silence them before they can get their purge off for your Merc Jacket. Typically when a player has a purge, like for me on Arcane, my main goal is to purge their sustain abilities. So a Mercenary Jacket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit them with my Q to proc my passive. Now, obviously the passive is you get 3 normal attacks at increased attack speed and attack range. We're focusing on the attack speed aspect of this now. So, what I want to do here is I want to use my Q to proc my passive, and then I want to silence to stop them from being able to purge me. But before I silence, I use my Merc Jacket. And what this will do is it will also reset my normal attack timer so that I can use my normal attack straight away. Sometimes you'll notice that you can't use basic attack straight after a normal attack because sometimes it just doesn't work for some reason. I don't know if it's a bug or not, or if there's just a little delay. So we'll do it in action. It will be quite fast, so you might have to keep up. So you want to Q, Merc Jacket, bam, 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 bam. And I've got all my Merc Jacket stacks off basically in the space of like half a second. There's a reason why I haven't done a tutorial on Arcane Staff yet. And it's basically for the exact same reason I mentioned earlier. Is that Arcane is seriously situational in terms of the fight can change completely depending on what you're fighting against. Now this kid's coming in pretty hot right here. He's a one-hand crossbow, which is actually quite a hard matchup because he does a lot more damage than I can with his pokes. So my main job is to purge his boots, maybe cleric robe, depending on how he uses it. So in that situation, I didn't really have much time to focus because it is a hard fucking matchup. But you'll see what I tried to do is use the iframe, which I did perfectly. And what the iframe does is that if you can time, which I mentioned earlier, if you can time when the tick, like a Arcane Staff or a one-hand crossbow hits you, you can actually block out the entirety of the damage. In that fight, considering I had to brawl a lot more than Kite, because I pretty much have the exact same mobility as a one-hand crossbow, my idea was to use my E for damage and the silence more than the purge. I know how to prevent a cleric robe not popping just by not touching him during that time. If you don't touch a cleric robe, it won't activate their cleric robe, and it will basically give me a chance to, you know, use my E in a different situation and make his armor absolutely useless. So we've already made 750k, which is what, you know, 14 times the amount my build is worth. So I'm sorry if this tutorial hasn't been like particularly interesting or too in-depth so far. It's really hard for me to try and show what you need to do on Arcane because of the amount of concentration you need. Because there's just too much to think about when you're playing Arcane. It's not like another weapon, say like, I don't know, any of the swords basically, where you've got a really straightforward task of, you know, get your stacks and just produce as much damage as you can. Everything in your build needs to be used correctly, which is why, once again, I'll say it, this isn't a weapon that should be used in any situation besides corrupted dungeons. Right, so we're into another one. This time, I'll try and explain what the thought process is before I get into fight. But obviously, anything can change throughout the fight while it happens. And it would appear we have a rat. So we have another crossbow. He has a mage robe, but he's on frost shield, which is probably the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And he's also on Wanderlust, which is also one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. So, you know, he's going to use that. I'm going to iframe the damage. I'm just going to use that for a silence, basically. And I'm going to use my reflex, so he pretty much has nothing to do here. He's used his mage robe. I'm going to wait for that to end, and I'm going to get off all my normal attacks for my merc jacket. I'm going to use my boots here for the extra HP because he's already used his Wanderlust, and it's pretty straightforward. There's one thing I don't like fighting against, and it's one-hand crossbows, because of the fact that it's got pretty much the exact same mobility you have, but with more damage output. Now, I know I mentioned at the start that realistically not to think about the iframe on your W, but as an experienced Arcane player, I kind of just use and abuse it. But it's not something that you should always be thinking about, to be honest, considering, you know, 90% of the time as someone who is just getting into Arcane is not going to be able to time at all. So as I mentioned earlier, there's something that you really need to know with Arcane that I haven't been able to properly show off yet because everything's been really, you know, situational, like I mentioned earlier. Your merc jacket, you really need to combine with your Qs. And while I have done this, yeah, like every time, the way to do this more efficiently, also as I mentioned earlier, which you can do in combination with your W or your E, is to use your Q, merc jacket, W, and that will get off 2 stacks already for using your W. And before that even happens, you've got your full merc jacket stacks off. It's really useful against people that are either going to try and purge you, or basically when you need to get full HP in, you know, a 1vx fight as fast as possible. It's actually really hard for me to commentate over the fights what my thought process is, because a lot of the time I've already planned out the fights in my head before they've even happened. A lot of really experienced players will do that. Not saying I'm good or really experienced, but you get into really nice habits of being able to almost watch out the fight and how it's going to play out before it's even happened in your head. So maybe if we do this again, maybe I'll do it for something like Ava Roads, which is more related to the sort of content that I like doing. What I could do is maybe watch over some clips of mine that I've got previously, or go out and record some clips, and then in editing, what I'll do is I'll comment what I was thinking at the time. So if that's something you think you'd much rather watch, then feel free to let me know in the comment section below. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I mean, if you need any more help, like I mentioned before, feel free to join my Discord or follow me on Twitch so you get notified whenever I go live. And if you'd like me to do a sort of video where I talk over the fights that I've done previously, or I go out and record some fights and I show you what my thought process was and how I would play out the fight, then let me know in the comment section below.